Hello, guys. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we have with us Lance Scoular, who is the founder of Key Directions, and he's joining us from Australia. Hi, Lance.
Hi, Halasani. Thank you for inviting me to your wonderful channel, and greetings from Sydney, Australia, the land down under.
Sure. Thank you. So, what can you tell us about some more about yourself and your company, like Key Directions?
Sure. So my career has been in international trade and transport. So 1968, first year out of high school, I started working for a company that was involved in helping people import and export. They arranged the transport in and out of the country on ships and planes, as well as local transport in Australia. Over the next number of years, I worked for two American companies, 3M, and then what is now known as Baxter International, Baxter Healthcare. And from there, I started up my own business as a customs broker who clears things through customs in Australia, and most countries in the world will have customs brokers to clear through their customs authorities. And I was as a freight forwarder organising the freight in and out of the country. So in a lot of things happened over the many years, but then in 1997, I had been working for a freight forwarder. We'd sold the business to them, and then I left there and I started doing training, helping people in the freight forwarding area to understand sea freight procedures, how to deal with the process of handling other people's imports and exports through sea freight. And I did that around Australia. And at the same time, I had been doing some courses before, but I arranged with a number of community colleges in Sydney, Australia, to run 2-day workshops. And I did them on Saturdays because through the week I could be anywhere in Australia doing that training. So at that stage, I decided to start up a business called Key Directions because that was let me put it this way. The directions of international trade is finding out where to go and where to bring things from and where to send things through. So Key Directions seemed a good name to have. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. It's actually coordinated with what it is, but I wanted to ask you, like, I see that you right now you have a company and you're obviously well known. Especially, we see on LinkedIn that you have a lot of followers and a lot of connections. However, how do you begin in the first place? Like, where do you go when you decided that you want to start selling things? Where was the first place that you went to get help in starting in this world?
In the early days of starting my own business,
Yes.
yeah, okay. So when I decided, so what happened is I didn't go to university. I didn't probably have enough good marks to do that. But once I got involved in this import export, I decided to go and I did a 2-year supervision course. And then after that, I started a 4-year management certificate course at a local technical and further education, TAFE. So I did that at night, and it was great because I was studying with other people that were also working in there. So there was a school teacher, there was a policeman, there were people in other industries. So we had a great time of sharing knowledge, not only from the tutor or the tutors that we had, but also sharing our own knowledge between our experiences. So at the end of that course, I thought really I had this desire to start up my own business. And so I did a lot of research. And before I started the business, I actually took 2 weeks in our Christmas holidays. Now, we're in the southern hemisphere, so it's winter time now. But at Christmas time, it's summer. And so we have summer holidays over that Christmas period. So I decided I would just go out in my local area where I was living at the time and I found companies that might be importing or exporting, and I knocked on doors and got a number of people that said, yeah, I'll give you a go. I explained what I could do as a freight forwarder and a customs broker. And so on the strength of that, there wasn't enough business to make it, I was sure of it succeeding. There was enough to give me the confidence to get work ahead. So I resigned. I gave 4 weeks notice, and then I resigned and started up my business. And I worked from home. I just had an office at home, and that's how it started. And I did a lot of research. Back then, there wasn't the internet. This was 1976 is when I actually launched the business full time, and I was working for myself at that stage. But I subscribed to newsletters. They weren't online back then. There's one from England that I subscribed to. It had to come by airmail. So I did a lot of research. I read a lot of books to improve my understanding of what the world trade was all about. So that's how I started. Yeah.
So you said that you basically started like door by door, and then you basically taught yourself with books and people that you were meeting on the way. This does mean that there's no like a degree that you need to get from university to start into the entrepreneurial world.
Well, you back then the word entrepreneur wasn't really used. I was just started a business. I was a small business person basically. Um, so there would have been courses back then on international trade, but at university. But part of that doing that management course, although the course wasn't about import export, it was about management and learning the aspects of how to manage a business. And we had, I remember one of the books was by Peter Drucker, who's considered the father of modern management. And that book, there was a lot of gems in there. And talking to the other people in the group that I mentioned, particularly the people in business, I talked to them about the aspects of importing and exporting, and we learned from each other. And they said, oh, we do this with our imports, or we do that with our exports. So I learned from them, as well as the other courses through books and magazines and newsletters.
What would you say that are the most like profitable businesses to start with when you have nothing and you basically have zero cash flow? What businesses would you say that are the most likely to succeed?
Well, I think these days a digital business where you're selling information, or something that doesn't require physical goods. Although I come from the physical world because of importing and exporting, it's physical products. But these days, well, you've started a YouTube channel. There's plenty of young people that have started YouTube channels sharing information and earning money out of that. So I think the digital economy allows you to start up something without too much cost. You've got a phone, you've got a computer, you've got a microphone. You can virtually do many things, but you obviously have to have something that people want to part with their money to give to you. So you have to have good value of the information that you're giving out, or it might be entertainment. You might be a singer, and you could set up a YouTube channel and say, go to my Patreon page and pay me some money if you like my music. So there's some things. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's some things that come to top of mind for me.
Yeah, definitely. I have seen a lot of people starting in the digital world, and I see that it is a very, very low cost because all that you need is a phone screen and a computer. And maybe back in the day that would have been a big inversion, but nowadays like it's the norm for everybody. Even 7-year-olds have phones on their pockets, so it's a very cheap way to start. And I want to ask you, like, how do you time manage? I have seen that in your LinkedIn, it always says that you're active on LinkedIn. How do you time manage to like combine your personal life and your LinkedIn without them clashing too much against each other?
Well, my LinkedIn and my Twitter, they're my two basic channels that I use daily. Um, it's on my phone. I mean, I hardly use my desktop as far as Twitter and that. Even some of the things that I create, I do it on my phone. So because that phone is beside me, even when I'm sleeping, I listen to audiobooks because I've got a thing called tinnitus. I've got ringing in the ears. I can actually hear it now. Sometimes I don't notice it, but I go to sleep with an audiobook in my ear. So my phone is with me all the time. So that's probably why, if you're checking me out, I'm live, because I'm on my LinkedIn, my Twitter, it's live. So time management, as you asked, is really a matter of wanting to prioritize what you do. In fact, when you sort of sent me the list of questions that you wanted to discuss, I thought what I Googled, as you would do, time management. I mean, I know about time management, but I thought, what's the latest thing? So I found a number of things. Then it came up about 80-20, the 80-20 rule, or it's known as the Pareto principle, that 20% of your, or 80% of your profits might come from 20% of your clients or customers. But I came across a book and I pulled it up here. It's called Success Forces. It was written in 1980, and I think I heard about it somewhere, and I ordered it probably in a few years after that. And there's one chapter, and it's only 2 pages, but it's called the 80-20-30 rule. And Joe Sugarman, the author, said the Pareto principle, the 80-20, which you can use in many things, he said he used it in his own business, that he realized that if 20% of your headache products or headache customers, let's say, if they create 80% of your problems, if you get rid of those 20% of products or customers that create those headaches for you, your profits will go up by 30%. Now, I used to do a newsletter and post it out to my clients. I type it out, I take it to the printer, they print it out, we put it into envelopes and mail it off. Not like today, you can just email it out. But I mailed those out. One of my clients had a wholesale hardware business, and he imported products from overseas, and then he sold those to hardware stores. And he came back to me, he said, there's one product in particular that I used to have all sorts of problems. People would complain about it. I'd have calls all the time because they wanted more information about it, whatever it was. He dumped it. He didn't even try and sell it. He just sent it to the tip, got rid of it. And he said, all of a sudden I had all this more time to spend on the other products and my other clients that didn't give me the headaches. So that's a good time management thing, by eliminating things that give you problems.
So basically, the things that are not like bringing you the profit that you want or the success that you want, you basically just drop them aside and ignore them.
Yeah, exactly. And so the Pareto principle, one of the things, if 80% of your profit comes from 20% of your clients or your products, concentrate on those 20%, because that will give you much more revenue. If you concentrate on that small percentage, that will improve your profit, because you're giving that extra boost to those most profitable products. Yep.
Yeah, sure. And so, like, what mistakes would you like recommend always avoiding when starting into the physical trading of items, like worldwide?
Okay, so yeah, in my course, it was a 2-day course basically, so it wasn't in depth like going to a university or something, but it was basically to give the idea, the basic concepts. And I had what I call the 7 facets of the import-export business. And one of the things that I would, in the early stage of my presentation, I would say, now we're going to talk about risk, because in international trade, there's much more risk than if you're trading locally. So you're in Los Angeles area of California. So if you were trading whatever it might be within the state of California, there's not that much difficulty. You have to arrange transport to live. Let's say you're delivering some frisbees. We're talking about frisbees before. And so you'd package those goods, you organise with a trucking company to deliver those throughout California. If you're going to deliver it throughout the whole of America, for all the different states, you'd obviously get a company that has a distribution network to do that. But if you were then to sell those frisbees overseas, let's say to Australia, then you'd have to say, well, how do I get them out of the country? Oh, US, customs or whatever, they have rules and regulations. I have to find out how to get them out of the country going through the processes. When they arrive in Australia, the customs here are going to be interested in it. There may be duties and taxes. There could be a problem with a ship that loses containers. There's been a lot of containers being lost over the last 2 years with storms and things like that. So you need to understand what the risks are. So I came up, as I do in most of the different aspects of my course, the concept of risk, I came up with what I call the castle strategy of minimising risk in international trade. Now, the castle is an acronym, CASTLE. The C is credit risk. That's for the seller. So in international trade, we talk about importers and exporters, but in reality, the best term to use is sellers, is generally the exporter, but not always, the seller and the buyer. So if you were selling to me in Australia, you'd be the seller. So when negotiating with me, you'd be interested in getting payment up front, because that would reduce your risk of me not paying you. Okay, if you said, look, I'll let you pay 50 days after you get the goods, well, what happens if I don't pay you after those 50 days? So you'd be interested in saying, I want you to pay me up front. From my point of view, I'd say, I'd rather wait till the goods get here, because what happens if they get lost or damaged or whatever? So you can see there's both parties have different interests. So the credit risk is the seller's risk of not getting paid. The A is assignment risk. Assignment is the transfer of ownership from one to the other. And so there's something in some parts of the world between different countries, there might be risks in the goods may not be allowed into that country. So I might be selling, let's say, cannabis. So I know in many states of America that cannabis is used. It's a legal thing, but other parts of the country it's not. So if I were to send cannabis to Australia, which I wouldn't be doing because it's illegal here, but you see there's different rules and regulations that may stop you importing or exporting certain products. So that's CA. The S is supply risk. So in the case of you and me, you're the seller, I'm the buyer. The supply risk is, what if I've paid for the goods and you don't send them to me? Or I've paid for the goods, but when they arrive, I ordered blue pens, but you sent me red pens. Now, they're still pens, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted blue pens and you sent me red pens. So there's a supply risk. So CAST, the T is for transport risk. So the transport risk can be loss or damage during the journey. So ships can sink, planes can crash, or goods can get damaged. So there's a risk there in the transportation of the goods. There's a risk there. So that's CASTL, the legal risk. Now, in different parts of the world, there's different intellectual property rules, like trademarks, copyright, all those sorts of things. So you need to understand, does the product that that I've got or I want to get, is there any problems in my country, or is there a problem getting it out of the other country using, because of their intellectual property and other aspects of legal risks? And there's also country risk, etc. And then the final one is exchange rate risk. So if I was buying those frisbees from you, you'd quote me in US dollars, I would have to transfer those my Australian dollars. I had to convert them into American dollars, and the exchange rate may fluctuate from when we first negotiated our deal. By the time we actually do the transfer, it may have changed, and I might lose out, or I might win too, because there is a fluctuation in currencies. So that's the risks that I talk about early in my course, so that people are aware. They're not going in saying, oh, import, export, you can make a fortune. Fantastic. No, there's a lot of risk. There's more risk than trading locally. So they're the CASTLE, the Castle acronym, the Castle strategy for minimizing international trade risk.
Yeah, I see from that there's like a lot of risks that the younger generations, we have no idea of, and truly something that at least in America we don't cover in schools at all. So we wouldn't be prepared to make any type of interaction with someone in another country, because it could very well go wrong in the worst ways. So
Yep.
like, around these terms, like I just came up with the question, like how do you know what people to trust and to do business with? What are the red flags that you look for?
Well, before we came live, we were talking about LinkedIn, and one of the things today that I say to people in my courses is that use LinkedIn. So if you're negotiating with a company overseas and you want to figure out what their standing is, are they trustworthy? First of all, find the company online, go onto their website if they have one, hopefully they do, and check out some of the people. Generally, they'll have an about section or our team. So in the team might have the CEO or the president of the company, whatever their title is. Then go onto LinkedIn and check them out and see, not only check out who they say they are, if they've got any recommendations, go down to those recommendations, see what those recommendations are and who those people are. Check those people out that are recommending them. So if you do that a number of times, if there's a number of recommendations, you check those people out, and the people that are recommending that person that you're doing the research on, if that gives you a bit more confidence, because there's a range of people that have given the recommendation. Most people won't recommend somebody for whatever they're saying unless they believe it to be true and they've experienced that. So there you go.
Okay, yeah. So basically, use the review pages to see what are the opinions of the other
Yeah,
clients.
review pages too. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. And so we're running out of time, but I know that you wrote a book recently. Would you like to tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's the e-guide to Incoterms 2020. Now, in international trade, there's Incoterms. I'm just checking the time. Yeah, okay. Incoterms is the international commercial terms, and they're published every 10 years over the last few decades by the International Chamber of Commerce, which is based in Paris, France. And those Incoterms are basically used when you're negotiating, as we were just talking about. If I was to import frisbees from America from you, we would negotiate one of the Incoterms. We'd say who's going to be looking after what. And those Incoterms talk about the obligations of the seller and the buyer, the risks, and the costs. Okay, so the International Chamber of Commerce publishes the Incoterms book. They published it last year, 2020, and a colleague of mine, Corinne Campbell, the previous edition in 2010, we wrote a book. It's a very simple guide with a number of case study with a case study for each one. So we published that to help. It's not any good on its own. You have to use it with the official Incoterms book, but it helps you to understand what the book's talking about in simple terms. We've tried to dumb it down and make it simple to understand what they're trying to say.
Well, there you go, guys. Go check out this book if you are interested in all these worldwide trading and understanding all these terms that truly I think are very important, especially coming forward with all the development that we're having in the technological and even medical field. We're going to
Exactly.
we're going to need to like expand this worldwide, and we don't want all those goods to go sinking to the bottom of the ocean or getting extravagated everywhere. So, how I see that you wrote this with a colleague of yours. How do you find people to make business with? Like, how do you find your future coworkers?
Well, a lot of it, I use both Twitter and LinkedIn to find people. If I find them on Twitter, and then check them out if I can on LinkedIn. So, you know, I'm actually going to be doing a Amazon live stream shortly, but I've been researching a lot of authors because I want to interview the authors. So I find them on LinkedIn, then I check them out, and I can get in touch with them through that.
Well, yeah, that's I've been seeing lately that LinkedIn is a very big platform for the professional field, which is really good to separate also a piece of the social media platforms to professionals rather than just the classic joking time with that
Yeah,
our generations usually have with social media.
sure.
Well, this is going to be the end of this interview. Thank you so much for being with us today. I think it's been great learning about all these things that truly I think most of the people who have watched Enter and Exit Live have had no idea of their existence even. So thank you
Sure.
so much for that. And bye guys.
Godspeed.